think I just got logged out. I want to make sure we're just live.
I see the little live on custom live streaming service.
Just want to make sure we're in there. The link has not updated for some reason. There we go. There we go. Okay, so we are live. Apologize about that. Just got logged out. Welcome everybody to another NPM Open RFC call. Today's date is Wednesday, August the 11th, 2021. We're going to be following along in the agenda that was posted in issue number. Just open this up, issue number 431. And for folks that joined late, feel free to add yourselves to the HackMD meeting notes doc that I just shared in chat. And just a quick reminder, these calls and all of the communications on the NPM RFC's repo covered by code of conduct. We just ask that folks please be mindful and thoughtful of others as they're speaking. Please review that. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to myself. As folks are talking, please raise your hand and I'll call on you to participate and just try to be nice and civil on these calls. As well, I just want to provide some space and time for folks. If anybody had any announcements that they wanted to share, feel free to speak up now. If not, then we can dive into the agenda. As noted, we've moved around the order a bit. Want to pull up essentially items from last week. We did a deep dive on essentially NPM audit improvements. This was spun out of Tierney's RFC for essentially NPM audit assertions. I'm not sure, Tierney, if you want to give a quick update there on the action items from your side, just to capture again what you were referencing before the call went live.
Yeah, I have PR'd or updated the PR with in the time that I was giving my thing. I finished what I was saying I'd also add. I've updated the PR with the kind of additional scoping and the additional kind of external references to similar or related PRs and tools and standards or whatever the correct term to encompass everything is. So that's kind of in there. That was the only takeaway that I had from it. I believe there's NPM team takeaway too.
Yeah, so I can give an update there. We have not followed up from last week on any investigation yet. I will provide an update by next week. Essentially, we'll queue up a card or some work to be done to investigate just essentially how we can clean up the existing audit experience, if at all. And that was one of the key takeaways is what's something small that we can do that's actionable that can also help in this space. Is there something we can do to the existing audit experience? So I'll just provide that. Let's see, we'll provide updates. Did anybody else have any comments they want to share about or any updates since last week's deep dive? No, Isaac, you were unfortunately not able to join.
Yep, no worries.
Yeah. I imagine that won't be the last time we're going to talk about this at length. So I think there will be opportunity in the future to have more calls with folks on this.
Cool.
Yeah, and in terms of the open PRs, I just wanted to also give time for, I'm not sure if ZB is on call, it doesn't look like it. So I'm just going to essentially say not available to provide updates. I know he had a set of action items also. He was providing some updates to Arborist, I believe, and to the client itself to help resolve some issues and to pull out some extra metadata that was lost between V6, V7 to fix up, I think, NPM Audit Resolver, his tool. I'm not sure, Isaac, if you know if any of that landed or if he actually...
Last I saw, there was some changes that were required to make it work, and haven't gone back and reviewed it since then.
Any chance you can find the reference to the PR?
That is Arborist PR 301. And it's still sitting in changes requested.
Any update on the NPM audit license improvements, Tony, again?
No, I haven't gotten around to that.
One thing that did actually was just like the other day reported to me in out of band from GitHub, but apparently the license speedix string is not being included in the minified pacument files, which wasn't an issue in npm v6 because it didn't do anything with license stuff. Now, however, what that means is when we save the hidden lock file by npm 7, we don't have that license metadata because it's not included in the manifest that we use to build the tree. So we're going to probably have to address that. Otherwise, that's going to become an issue if we start making that kind of load bearing for feature work.
Is this something that you're going to be able to work with the registry team by chance, Isaac, or can we queue this up on there?
It's a small change to get it into those Corgi docs.
Yeah.
But it definitely is a change. It's not zero work. It's just adding one field to that minify package metadata service and then rerunning it on all the existing packages, which that's
what ticks.
Well, that bit is just like it's a program that's got to kind of run for a couple of days, but it's not like hard or risky to figure out how to do it.
Yeah. And it
just takes time to chug through everything.
Queue up, adding metadata to Corgi docs. Okay, moving on then, unless folks had any other comments from...
I had a quick question.
Sure, go ahead.
So I'm not too familiar with the audit licenses of what's going to be added, but it's funny, in my company, we've got something that we've rolled ourselves similar for auditing. Would this result in being able to generate a list of all the packages and licenses as like an output from the audit? Because this is used to make available to customers, just so they can check themselves as well. Although they'd be able to obviously run this themselves as well. But we do provide a file, and I was wondering if we could replace our own tooling with this entirely.
So today you can run npm ls-long, and it will output the license along with a bunch of other junk about each package. And it's not too terribly hard to, or it wouldn't be too terribly hard to, have a command that just searches for licenses or does other things with them. The problem is if you do a fresh install with npm 7, it'll be loading the package manifest from the registry, and then it saves in order to prevent having to go through and read 2000 package JSON files, it saves that tree that it built to a file at node modules/.packagelock.json, which is essentially the same format as a lock file, just in a different place, in order to kind of represent and doing a slightly different job, because it's just representing what is there on disk. If that file is there and it's the newest thing in the node modules folder, we use that rather than actually reading the folder. The hazard is, on a fresh install, it will not include license information because that's not in the minified manifest. So there's this kind of chain of dominoes that leads to not having license info available. If you just delete that file, it'll have to read the node modules folder, and then it'll get the proper license metadata. Yeah, so that's just a thing we kind of have to fix on the registry side to keep that whole machine working, without that weird little glitch.
Yeah, I think Tierney specifically, you might also be able to like top up there in terms of the RFC. I think explicitly adding license auditing.
Yeah,
like what you had in mind.
Yeah, so the RFC specifically is built around reporting licenses and having the allow list and a block list. This is largely built on top of prior work done by Kyle Mitchell. I hope I got his name right. I'm pretty sure I did.
Yep.
Yeah, largely built on top of prior work by directly consuming a module called licensee and basically masking that as an npm API. And it allows for allow list, block lists, a bunch of nice to have things. And yeah, just basically kind of setting up license tooling in npm directly. So, your team can provide an allow list and say, I don't, or more useful, a block list and say like, don't allow, GPL, and you won't get GPL modules theoretically. Well, depends on exactly what the implementation is. Like you might download it and then you might get an error, or we might not download it. I don't know yet. But yeah, does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yes. Yeah.
Cool.
It's a mixture of this and possibly parsing the log file if it contains the licenses and stuff like that. So it's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, one good thing to note here, if you're interested in getting involved, there is a work in progress, a drafted PR right now that Tierney started with Roy Adorno from our team, who's had to go on leave. And I know Tierney's also pretty limited in time. So if you're interested in getting like the POC or the initial work done, Alistair, feel free to jump into that PR. I just linked number 3452. And yeah, feel free to contribute or even potentially sync up with us async to help get that over the finish line. So
I'll take a look.
Yeah, especially if you already have written tooling in the space, it's you'll obviously have a leg up on folks that are coming in fresh. So cool. Any other questions or feedback updates as it regards to, I guess, the deep dive from last week? Tierney, I moved your quick note / update into underneath the item for the actual audited assertions RFC. We'll keep those open. All of those RFCs I think are important right now since there's a lot of folks giving feedback in them. But yeah, I want to move on to a number of net new issues that were opened in the last week or so. Given the fact that we weren't able to get to them last week, the issue 430, Improving Workspace Terminology by Jason Williams. Do not believe, other than Jordan, who is not here right now, I don't know if many folks have gotten a chance to look at this yet. But this essentially was stemming from a discussion that was made in our feedback forum. I think Isaac, you gave some feedback yesterday. I'm not sure if you want to
Yep.
top up.
Sure. I mean, it would be nice to sort of definitively put this to bed. I think, I don't know if that's possible or not, just given how language works, but essentially there's some ambiguity in the JavaScript community about whether the word workspace refers to the project that defines workspaces in its package JSON, or the sort of sub projects in subfolders that are referenced by that workspace's definition. The way that we have gone in NPM is to follow Yarn's terminology, which differs from Lerna's. We're not 100% consistent. I don't think Lerna or Yarn are either. Again, like, language is hard and it's just easy to be kind of sloppy with it. But what I wrote is kind of my understanding of how we're using these terms, which is sort of project or project root refers to the place where you're running npm commands, which has a package JSON. It's typically the root of a Git repository, and it may include workspaces definitions. And then a workspace is the thing that is referenced by that workspace's definition. So packages/foo is a workspace within the project that's your current working directory when you're running npm commands. So I just tried to like write up a quick kind of rough draft of a glossary of some of these things. And again, like, with the acknowledgement that, like, yes, like, there's no, in my opinion, there's no like objectively better definition of anything, and we had these sort of two to choose from, which are in conflict with each other and both predate us. As it happens, like, we've kind of settled on Yarn's definitions rather than Lerna's, and I think changing it is probably not very valuable.
Just trying to capture a few notes here. So I linked to a few references for folks if you're trying to follow along. I also shared essentially an image of a visual I put together a while back of how I felt like we were defining these things. I know there was a to actually, I think, submit that into and amend essentially our original RFC for workspaces with that visual. I can take that as an action item on my plate to make that PR happen, and then we can dispute whether or not that's the actual reality of or picture of reality.
Well, I mean, I think also it'd be a good idea. What's got me thinking this morning is, like, maybe we need to have an explicit glossary within our documentation of some of the terms that npm uses, and even have like our doc building scripts automatically link any word that it finds in the glossary to its glossary definition, just so that if somebody is reading the npm docs and they see the word workspace, they can like link to it and see what actually we mean by that. And then we don't have to keep redefining it in multiple places, which can kind of go out of sync with one another.
For sure.
That's a big nice to have. The simple thing would just be, let's write the glossary, put it in the docs. At least then we have something to point to kind of manually.
Yep. Did anybody else have any feedback on that? So reading through probably the discussion.
I know this is always going to be a controversial thing, and like, it's a controversy that predates our implementation of workspaces. So there's not much we can do. Like, we are definitely going to upset half of the workspace users with whichever direction we choose, but we just kind of have to pick something and go with it.
Yeah. And I've just put down the first comment, at least note I took was paraphrasing, language is hard.
I think it's fine so long as we define it consistently and reference that definition, so the glossary.
Yeah.
I think that's the best solution.
Yeah, the action item here is close this RRFC. We're not going to do it. We're not going to change it. Add a glossary to our docs, and probably do an editorial pass through our docs to make sure that we're using these words consistently.
So I took down an action item. Feel free to add or amend the meeting notes so I capture folks' sentiment properly. But yeah, let's move on then to, and I guess the action item here is also close this RFC. I don't believe like we need to necessarily keep this open.
Yeah, I got it. I will write up the actions if y'all want to move on to the next one.
Cool. Moving on then to the issue 428. npm publish should tell you the endpoint that it's about to publish to. I believe that this this essentially follows up on another issue. I couldn't find it in the short time that I was looking that other folks have had for, I believe we made a change to npm login or npm add user to essentially output which registry you were configured to and which you were about to send your password and auth token essentially to. I think this is a similar kind of UX improvement that it seems like a no-brainer from my perspective. I'm not sure if other folks have any thoughts or feelings on this. I'll share the reference here. I think it's just, it's obviously a quality of life improvement for folks. If you happen to, work with many third-party registries, you have, distinct configuration between those. You want to ensure that you're publishing to the right thing. You don't want to have a painful experience. I think it makes a lot of sense. Everybody's a thumbs up. Fritzy's a thumbs up. I think action item here is probably to backlog.
So is there value in telling you what endpoint it's pushing to in a way that doesn't allow you to kind of be like, wait, no?
Like an interactive. So we've talked about like
yeah, we talked about like a publish information prompt.
Publish prompts. Yeah, publish prompts and interactive modes as well.
Is there a dry run for publish?
Yeah,
I was just going to say it's not the problem dry run's supposed to solve.
Okay, well, if that's the case, then that kind of answers my question. Yeah, you're right. If there's a dry run publish that says, hey, you're about to publish to this location, and yeah.
I think it's just, I don't think if you provide the flag dry run right now, it doesn't provide you with the output, right? So that's we already have the mechanism. It's just improving the output of npm publish --s dry run, right? So.
Speaking of printing, that would be nice in case where I have my two-factor set up. Would be nice to print the target registry before the prompt for the second factor.
Yeah.
Sorry, say that one more time, ZB.
Print it before we get the 2FA.
Yeah.
Sorry, cut you out there.
Whichever was audible.
Sure that I get good action items here. So we'll add registry targets config, but when using npm dry run.
To be more specific, I would suggest doing the same changes to npm regardless of the dry run flag, because the dry run is there to emulate everything except modifying the outside world. So it would be nice to have the exact same behavior from both. Just let the dry run stop before it actually pushes anything.
That's a good note.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we're getting down to like ordering of lines of code at this point. I think, yeah, it should just print it as the first thing. Whether it's dry run or not, say we're about to push to this target location. The two-factor auth request happens if we make the push and then get a response from the server saying you need a two-factor. So that's always just going to be only when we're actually doing the publish.
Yes, I guess unless it's enabled. Do we have a count level two-factor today? So we can see that essentially you will be required. Oh, I think we lost your audio, Isaac.
Sorry, Mike, can you hear me?
Yep.
We have no way of knowing on the CLI whether a second factor will be needed. That is not our problem. We make the HTTP request, and then the server says, I need a second factor from you.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Any other feedback on this? Other than good, let's do it. One thing I might want to, just taking a step back, is there any similar commands folks can think of that require this, or you'd like to see essentially the target printed out in the output? So we have login now, and we would have publish to essentially do this. Is there other commands you'd like?
I mean, everything that pulls from the registry and prints a lot, like npm info. But I think npm info in particular already gives away that information.
Yeah, I would imagine it's just where it's going to be necessary is stuff where we're doing a write to the registry. So publish,
team org,
publish,
yeah.
unpublished, team org, dis tags, that kind of stuff.
I do think reads are equally important though as well. So it's clear that you're getting the information from where you expected to get it from.
I think it's a little bit less so, but and a lot of times in most reads, the output will tell you that anyway. If you do really want to see where we're making HTTP requests, you can always just turn on the HTTP log level, and you'll see every HTTP request. But like if we printed, for example, if we did this in install, it'd be pretty noisy, right? Because a lot of times when we're doing reads, we're doing like thousands of them.
Would having a like registry colon whatever the registry URL at the beginning of an install is like an optional thing, like dash registry or something, be or dash show registry be a potential option? Because like I have absolutely run into that when using like Verdaccio or something, where I think I'm reading from Verdaccio and I'm not, and like because my brain just thinks I'm already doing that, I'm not going to be like actively looking for it. So to be able to go and enable that at like my npm-rc level or something would be nice. A nice developer experience thing, I think.
Would you want it to do it just for the packages that you specified, or for all of the packages that it pulls if you turned on that flag?
I think I'd be happy to just have a registry, although that's fair. I perhaps batch it, so like group the ones that are from, I don't know how the resolution works, so I don't know if it like iterates through an entire registry first and then goes and iterates over the other one. But
no, it doesn't.
Okay, well that requires some design work, but yeah.
Because imagine like a clean install, no node modules, no package lock, right? You depend on 5 different packages from 5 different registries, and some of them then point back at other registries. or have, namespace scopes that are namespace to a particular registry. Like the read case gets pretty complicated.
Yeah.
What we could do is we could tell you like, well, and also we don't know that it's like a registry in a lot of cases. It's just there's URL at this host name, right?
So I've taken the action essentially. Let's investigate whether or not there's other, at least right now, like other write operations commands that we want to essentially bubble up the same experience for.
Yeah, certainly for writes. In every case where we're doing a write to the registry, there's one registry that we're doing one write to. So it's very straightforward to just say, let's print out the registry we're about to write to before we do it.
And then the safeguard there is to just be using that, or like having that and dry run essentially. Like if you're concerned that you're going to be publishing to the wrong registry, you can. Right, yeah. Like you can use dry run. So
yeah.
Cool. Any other feedback before we move on? Took action item there. Moving on to item and issue 427, the npm RC file improvements, also by Evan Carroll, who I don't think has joined us. Pasting a reference here.
My objection to this RRFC is that it goes just far enough to be a breaking change, but not nearly as far as I would like to go with refactoring our configuration layer. We've been kind of discussing internally in the CLI team on like ways that we can improve config. There's just a number of gotchas that are all kind of, a series of small reasonable steps that got us to a very unreasonable place in a lot of cases. So, one example that I always bring up is we have like save dev, save optional, save peer, save prod. And then we have to figure out, okay, what is the actual save type that we're going to pass to Arborist when it's writing stuff? We have other things like, global versus local versus location equals global versus location equals this other thing. And then also there's, do we switch to JSON instead of INI? All of these are really good things for us to try to tackle in a breaking change, in a Semver major change. We've also discussed like, having separate configs for install versus publish, which is kind of close to what Ev Carroll is getting to here. Maybe different configs that are scoped to particular registry host names. Like for example, I think it's come up recently that we want to have a different CA file if you're talking to a different registry. There may be other ones, right? We probably want to have a different timeout for different ones. Like anything related to HTTP could kind of be bundled under a particular host because it's all specific to that host. And then also most recently, as we've been talking about workspaces and workspace roots, and like if you CD into the workspace folder, how do we implicitly decide like, oh, you are actually in a workspace, you're not in just a random root project? What that surfaced there that Jordan brought up was like, well, actually, I do want to have multiple, configs that are scoped to a particular workspace, right? I might want to have one workspace that has prefer online and another workspace that has prefer offline or has a different default registry or what have you, even though or even different scope mapping. So in one case, scope foo goes to this registry, and within this other workspace, scope foo goes to a different registry. So they're different things and they cannot be deduped against each other. All of this kind of speaks to like, we need to take a step back. We need to like, and our config logic is just like, it's hairy, it's convoluted, and there's things that have side effects on one another in order to implement the functionality that people need. So it would be really nice to make it better. Last and certainly not least if you run npm install dash dash reg sit tree equals my private registry, it'll just install from the default registry because you misspelled it. So, and the fact that we kind of allow any old willy-nilly config, and we'll just parse it and throw it in the environment, even if it's something that doesn't match what we already know about, has really caused more problems than it's caused benefits, caused more problems than it's solved. So it'd be nice to get away from that as well, and literally say, like, if it's not a config we know about and you specify it in the CLI or in the options in the environment or your RC files, we will actually throw an error and say, no, I don't know what this thing is. You're trying to tell me to do something, whatever it is you had in mind, I can't do it, so I'm going to give up. So yeah, we should make our next big breaking change a complete overhaul of the config system. Get away from, oh, and I haven't even gotten into the rant about like nerf darts and the really just bizarre way that we track auth across multiple different registries. So I will wrap up to say our next big breaking change should be a major config tech debt overhaul.
Yep. Sounds like you're venting about your past self.
Not just my past self. Lots of people. Lots of people added to this.
But we're all here now, and we're all in it together. So the idea, I think, a bit of synopsis is to essentially audit config. We've been talking about doing a comprehensive sort of RFC or making some suggestions on how we're going to tackle this, including like what you're alluding to is the infinite acceptable configuration. So any arg is accepted by the npm CLI. It sounds like we can probably, take this back internally and then propose some sort of RFC to try to tackle this in a breaking in a major.
One idea that might be useful for doing something before the major version, this could go into user space. So just a thought, it is a possibility that when you come up with the format and the actual values to put in it, you could have a package that people can optionally install and use to have the new config format, and then use that package to translate to the old format that would be used by npm 7. And then when npm 8, assuming it happens in 8, comes out, people are already using this format in the wild, and there's already feedback that you've gotten before it got put in a new version, and you can no longer break it again.
Yeah, we could theoretically have a thing that will, or even an opt-in feature that would read the new format, the new kind of experimental config format, and then just dump everything into the environment that it finds, right? And that could also then throw an error if it finds something that's, if something gets put in there that's not a known config value. The reason why that doesn't quite go all the way is we still have save dev, save optional. Like there are actual config values that like config keys that we need to do away with. We should probably even get rid of -- global and just kind of make the space of our config namespace smaller.
Okay, so good action, or go ahead. Okay.
I was just saying, what do you mean by save dev and save optional? Like, do you mean just like you can put that into your npm RC and everything will become optional or dev?
Well, you can do that today. I mean, there are some good aspects of our config system that I would certainly want to keep. It is extremely flexible and customizable to a large number of workspaces. Like that much we wouldn't want to get rid of. But right now, like if you do npm install -- save dev -- save optional -- save peer foo, what do you think that does? That
I would hope adds it to all of them. But
nope.
Whatever came last.
Well, in that particular case, I think peer would override dev, and then optional would combine with peer and save it as an optional peer dev. It's just when we're installing something, we can only have one save type. And so we collapse these multiple different Booleans to a single option parameter. And it's just not clear, and it's very order dependent. So it gets really bizarre.
got you. Thank you for the clarification.
Yep.
It
And
aligns perfectly with WTF.js.
yeah, it's gotten better. I will say it's gotten better in npm 7. Like at least the logic for doing this weird thing is not smeared out in like 15 different commands and being done inconsistently. It's happening kind of all in one place. But as it turns out, moving all that logic and putting it all in one place just made all of us hate it even more.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if there's some interim step as well in terms of like what ZB was mentioning, like creating some sort of like path for how we get from here to there. Hate-driven development. I would like something like throw on unknown or something that like is a net new flag that essentially is trying to limit the scope of what we accept and is acceptable, and then creating that as a default going forward, or eventually introducing, like over time, we're gonna like have more discussions on this, but because everything we've been talking about is very much like hand wavy. But I know that we, as you're saying, Isaac, like we want to make changes to this. It's like, what's a good first step other than to take stock of the existing config, put that into an RFC, say, what do we need, what do we not need? I think we've already made a good, like a lot of refactoring work happen here in this place to like say what is trinary, what is affecting what flag, affects what other flag. Like this is essentially just an audit of all our config and then potentially introduce a net new format for doing things that are like, you know, command specific config, you know.
Yeah, so I don't know that it's all that hand wavy, but one other thing I forgot to mention is Nopt. Nopt, I just really want to deprecate it and never see it again. There's better, faster, more straightforward, doing less stuff options out there now that we should just use instead.
Okay, I've got.
But yeah, we need to have. I mean, you're right, and ZB is right. Like we need to have some kind of on ramp to it, and I think once we figure out kind of what's the goal end state, we can figure out. I mean, we could write a thing that'll just sort of do the best approximation to npm 8 or npm 9 config, and then sort of squash it into a project npm RC file. And we can also have it continue to read the INI file and then turn it into the new format for you or somehow. I definitely don't want to live long in a world where we have multiple different kind of config formats. So it could be JSON or it could be INI.
Yep. Okay. And it sounds like we should also like define scope explicitly. So like when we're talking about improvements to, let's say we want the ability to do command specific or even workspace specific config, that's different than us saying that we also want to eliminate the infinite config problem we have today. And Rebecca, I see you're also commenting here.
Oh, just on the thing from a while back there, which was every now and then in these discussions, npm doctor gets mentioned as a way to like fix stuff. And I'm not sure that that's an appropriate use of npm doctor.
Yeah, I was wondering if we can eventually do a refactor of Doctor. It's great conceptually to be doing to have around for checking stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like checking environments and checking certain, validating. But yeah.
Ideally, I want the config validation to like you shouldn't need to use npm doctor because npm anything should crash if it gets a config that's not valid. Instead of right now, if you give it an invalid value, like if you did -- save dev equals 7, it'll say, well, that's a number and I need a Boolean for this. So I'm just going to ignore it. What it should really do is crash. It should never like pretend you didn't say that.
Wait, actually, he uses Doctor. Okay.
I mean, if nobody's using Doctor, there might be things to improve in Doctor that would make people use it.
Yeah, there's a backlogged item to do some refactoring work there.
We could surface it a little bit more, make it a little bit more visible. I think mostly people don't use it because they don't know about it. If we could detect that there's some weird issue and say, hey, you should run npm doctor or whatever. But the problem is detecting the issues is like the thing that Doctor is for. So it's hard to know.
There's no way to limit the set, right? You can't just filter out and do one specific check with Doctor today. So that's another like improvement we could make if we were to increase the scope of what that's doing. You should also introduce something to be like, just run this specific check, like npm Doctor OS or whatever. Like,
yeah, we're getting. I don't think that's the thing to help with our on ramp for new configs though. I think there may be it's definitely something we're gonna have to think about because that's sort of why we flinched away from doing this in npm 7 was just it's too big and we already have peer depths and a bunch of other breaking changes in 7. So if we're going to break config, like we need to think about that in a similar way. Yeah, so doing it in user space, like there could be like an npm wrapper that will just like check your configs and sort of coerce it into the old format, or throw if it's unknown, and that could be worthwhile. I don't know.
Yeah,
be an option.
Cool. Let's try to get to the last one with the time that we have left. And I took an action item for our team to essentially just go back and provide, there's a lot of gripes and groans. Let's actually put a RFC together about what we plan to do about this. So number 425, so npm unpublish should have some type of warning when unpublishing a package. We'll copy and paste the ref here. Again, this was made last week. I don't think anybody else has noted anything about this yet. This is another example of, well, we could also provide better initial context around which registry you're obviously trying to unpublish to. Gar, I see your hands up. Did you have any feedback?
Just to remind folks that this is the policy on the npm registry. And so putting, hey, this is what will happen when you unpublish isn't factually even true for every user. So I would agree that warnings are right, but like, just let's not put up things.
So if you, also, again, I mean, we're talking mostly about the npm registry, the public registry, but this is only relevant if you're unpublishing the last version of the package or if you're unpublishing all versions with -force. If you are unpublishing a specific version, you can't publish that version again ever. It's burned, right?
Say that one more time, sorry, Isaac.
Yeah, as far as the npm registry is concerned, so I have no idea.
About, yeah. And I think the CLI will refuse to publish a version if it sees that there's a version there already listed in the time field. So, but it may or may not actually be enforced on the server, depending on your registry server. Yeah, but there's an interesting thing here where if you unpublish that last version of a package, it is effectively unpublishing all versions, and maybe that should also require the force flag.
Where if there's only one version, you go unpublish, that's all versions, and you have to. That's no different than if you went and tried to remove all of them at the same time. Yeah.
On the other hand, it's going to be possible for the 24 hours after it's been published and no more. So this is not that destructive.
Sorry, say that.
Cleaning up after yourself, because you're not going to be able to unpublish something that's not very fresh. So you're not going to break anyone anymore, like LeftPad famously did. So this is not that big of a deal, I would say.
I think the annoying thing is
single last version.
Yeah, so I publish a version of a thing. I go, oh, whoops, I forgot to include my main file, so I unpublish it. I fix it up. I try to publish it now with version 002, and I can't. I have to wait until tomorrow. So that's what's annoying.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And the reason why, yeah, it's well documented as an annoyance with our current policy. The reason why we don't let you publish a new version for 24 hours after a full unpublish is because a full unpublish is kind of leaving it in this somewhat vulnerable state where an attacker could publish a new version, right? Because there's no auth checks on that name. What we could also do is we could amend our, we could try to like look at the registry policies and just amend it to say, if you're publishing a new version of a package that was unpublished within the 24 hours, you can't publish a new version unless you are the person who unpublished it, right? So if you were the one who did that full unpublish, you can still write to it, but nobody else can.
I'm surprised it's not the case now.
I probably just nobody thought of it. I don't know. It might be hard for some reason.
It sounds like a thing. I mean, that feature was added after LeftPad, right? So like that the feature,
No,
I assume
this is somewhat different.
The unpublish?
So the unpublish, not being able to unpublish something after 24 hours was added after LeftPad. This is not being able to republish something within 24 hours after a full unpublish, which is a different, somewhat newer policy. I think that went into effect, at least since we've been at GitHub.
So, and just to be mindful, again, this is all specific to the public registry and our policies there. But the reasoning behind that, as far as I know, for context is so there wasn't someone that can go and squat on a name of a package after potentially you have just botched an initial a publication of a package, so somebody can't swoop in within that 24-hour period and steal the name that you were just about to publish to if you've removed all the essentially released the package back into the ecosystem.
But isn't this not helping you? Because now it's a matter of who wakes up first on the next day.
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, this is like...
It just makes it does, I mean, it increases the barrier to attack somewhat, because you can't just have a script that will hijack that'll be watching for deletes and immediately hijacking anything that comes through. So anybody who is depending on that will have a 24-hour window in which their build will break and they'll see that there's something going on.
So I know we are at time. I just want to, I guess, capture one more thing on this, is that this seems very similar to, especially, I think, CB, you noted something along the lines of a two-step process. It sounds very similar to when we were having discussions about NPM publish prompts. So imagine like an NPM unpublished prompt could be implemented here. That might be might allow you to have more visibility, or again, like a two-step process, or requiring force even might just make folks more aware about what they're going to do. It sounds like, you know, there's room for improvement around the UX of this from the CLI standpoint, but the actual policy and any kind of like messaging that a registry wants to provide about its policies for unpublishing is going to be specific to that registry, right? So there's mechanisms today for folks to essentially provide messaging back to CLIs. So in terms of actions for this, I'm going to leave it open for now and ask folks to comment on the issue itself if they want to. I don't know if there's anything we want to do specifically, if we want to potentially open up discussion for NPM unpublished prompts, or a two-factor, or not two-factor, but a two-step process for unpublished. Yeah, that's potential. But I encourage folks to participate in the next week in these RFCs, and we'll be back next week, same time, same place. And thanks everybody for jumping on today. Cheers.